Okay, now I'm recording. Welcome to Indicio Identity Community Meetup. This month is quite a little bit different from traditional other months. We have amazing speakers today. Our topic is IIW Sneak Peek. We have co-founders of IIW, Phil Windley and Kaliya Young, and I'd like to have them give you the overview and histories and the tips, and then we're gonna get into the conversation about what we want to discuss about in IIW, and this is very casual session. So if anyone questions, please let us know, and feel free to jump into the chat if you want to as well. So Phil, career, please give yourself time to share what you've been doing and talk about IIW.
Go ahead, Kaliya.
Thanks, Maya. Well, I thought we could start a little bit out about the history of like how we got started, right? Because we've been around for a long time, and many people may not know our sort of origin stories. But I think one of the things was there was a conference at the time before we got started called Digital Identity World. And they were very, very focused on enterprise identity and access management. And so it was in the context of that event that quite a few of us were like, hey, what about the end user? What about their perspective, right? And so we found each other in the context of those enterprise folks, and a mailing list got started. And then I think it was Phil was like, hey, everybody should come to Provo. And like that didn't, we couldn't get the momentum to come to Provo, but about 6 months later, there was enough momentum to gather together in the Bay Area. And so we convened the first Internet Identity Workshop to support the various different projects that were at the time all talking on the mailing list and working on, what would end up becoming OpenID. Several different projects thinking along the lines of people owning their own URLs and authenticating against them, and some guys with ideas about iNames, and the Microsoft folks talking about their ideas. So that was the first IIW in 2005, and then we all decided we should get together again in 6 months, and then now that's been happening for 16 years.
It's funny, if I can add to that we had done that first one, like Kaliya says. There was LID and OpenID and Skip and iCards and a couple of other things. And we all figured, okay, there's all of this momentum for just doing essentially URL-based identity, although identity iCard information cards were a completely different thing. Anyway, we just thought, okay, we'll get together a couple times, we'll solve this identity problem, then we can all go off and do the other things we want to do. Because we all had projects that needed identity. Of course, now it's, how many years later, 30, we were getting ready to do the 32nd IIW, and I don't think we've still got this identity thing licked. So,
yeah. And maybe I can talk a little bit about our format and sort of how that works. So that first IIW, we had presentations on day one, and I had gone to an event that used this method called open space technology and said, why don't we stick around for a day two and use that as how we would organize our time together. and I think you kind of went with it, Phil. Like, why not stay for the second day?
I was hesitant because I come from an academic background, and so I'd imagined this kind of nice academic conference where we, do a call for papers and, all of the usual stuff. And Kaliya proposed this crazy scheme to, just let everybody talk about what they want to. And I thought, okay, that sounds weird, but, let's try it. And we did, and it was awesome. And so we've done it ever since.
And so when we're in person, this means we, at the very beginning of every day of the conference, we sit in a big circle and we put cardstock and markers in the middle. And that's the tool that people use to name sessions they'd like to host. And those sessions can be any, and this is also true in the virtual, except we sit in a virtual circle of Zoom together. And those sessions can be anything from you presenting a new innovation that you've come up with in the last several months that you want to share with the community. It could be a question that you'd like people to come and answer in dialogue with you. It could be a critical topic that you want input from other folks. It could be sort of a compare and contrast between different choices that people might make, different protocols. A huge, it's very expansive in terms of what's possible. You don't have to be an expert to call a session either. One of our principles that guides our time together is whoever comes are the right people. And so we really encourage folks to put forward topics that are really alive and present for them, because it creates a really dynamic conference.
Yeah, when I joined before COVID, it was a really amazing experience. I never had conference like that before, so I really appreciate this creative format you're created and you've been doing for many years. Yeah, if that's okay, shall we move on to the conversation to discuss about our topic, or do you still want to talk?
Sure. I mean, would it make sense for me to just do a short little tour of the venue that's digital?
Yeah, sure. If you have
virtual.
Yeah. So we use a platform called Kiko Chat. And if you're registered, you'll get a link sent to you from Kiko that will put you onto this page. And then you click through and you get into what's the center of the conference, which is the opening and closing space circle. And the way that you click, you get into the Zoom room for whichever space you're in is by this top button up here. That prompts the opening of Zoom, which I won't click on because I will leave your Zoom that I'm in with you right now. You navigate between rooms by clicking on a different breakout space, and you'll notice that the page refreshes and you'll get into the notes area for that session, and each of the breakout times has its own note-taking page already posted in those sessions. Special at this IIW, we have some sort of like spaces where people can go and chat with each other that aren't just like breakout rooms. But there's also a new feature we're trying out. We're going to have, I don't know if it's installed yet, but we're going to have
Gather Town
embedded.
Look,
so there I am. I can go put in my name and I can get an avatar and I click next, and then I become like a little person in Gather Town. But I'm not going to do that because it'll interrupt the video on this. So that's going to be a fun socializing thing that's new. And then I just want to share one more thing, which is the agenda. So this is like a replacement for the physical wall that we have in the in the Computer History Museum. This is our digital wall of the sessions, the times. And so this is session 1. Starting time on the first day is 8:30 Pacific. And then if you scroll down, you can see session 2. And so there's a lot of space for all the different sessions that want to get named. We have a demo hour on the first day and a demo hour on the second day as well, at a different time zone. So one's more Europe friendly and one's more Asia friendly. And then at the end of every day, we have a closing circle where we invite folks to share highlights from their sessions. And we also have what's called open gifting, where people can give each other small tokens of appreciation for something that happened during the event or something that happened during the life of the community. So maybe I'll just pause and ask if there's any venue questions that make sense to address before sort of shifting to other types of questions. Oh yeah, and we have demo tables.
Anybody has any questions about format, what Kaliya and Phil talked about?
Okay.
All right, so we're gonna move on to next session. So Sam is going to moderate, navigate that conversation. So please.
Yeah. Well, let's give it a go. I lost track of how many IWs that I've been to, but it's less than Kaliya and Phil. But
Still a lot.
yeah, it's a few. I have Phil to blame for that. I first attended. I was actually at the time he was my graduate advisor at school, and so we were roped into coming, and that was a fantastic experience. So it's really good though. I was trying to think about the sessions that in the past that I have enjoyed the most, and while I can't, there's too many to sort of pinpoint or to talk about in detail. All of the best ones are discussions, not really someone presenting something or someone just talking the whole time. That's common for other conferences, but the IIW really does well with hosting discussions about things. And so for the sessions I'm planning on this year, what I do generally is I either put together some beginning material, and that might be a quick outline or some thoughts that I have, and then I start by sort of presenting that to sort of set the stage for the conversation, and then you have a conversation, and you never know where the conversation is going to go, which is part of the great thing about it, because you learn stuff in every session you're going to, whether you're hosting or not. And Kaliya mentioned the different kinds of sessions. Some of my sessions are things that ideas that we have that we want to sort of present and see what people think about it, if they have ideas or if there's things we should think of, or there's flaws that we didn't see, and then some of them have way more questions than and almost no answers, and so all of those types of sessions are really helpful to sort of get the conversation going. When you present in the beginning of Open Circle, it's helpful to give your session a title that helps people understand what's going on, because they're going to go back to the board, the spreadsheet in this case, to be able to grab, to look and see what it is and see which session they want to go to next, because they're one after another, and it's really busy. So so try and put some thought into how you're going to describe the concept, so the right people know which ones they want to attend, and you'll end up with a really good group. The other thing that I'd mention is that group size does not always indicate the success or a failure of a topic. I've had fantastic sessions that there's only 4 of us or 3 of us in there, but it was incredibly useful. And I've been in some where there was, in person, we were like exploding beyond the bounds of the room. But it doesn't, the size doesn't matter so much as the quality of the conversation. And so that's another comment that I'd make there. So yeah, anyway, any other advice on hosting sessions or anything else? I would love to, after that, to have a roundtable a little bit for ideas of sessions that people are considering hosting, and that way it can get your brain juices going, and perhaps you might be able to discover some of the things that you want to watch out for while you're there. Any wisdom, Phil, that you want to drop on us before we talk about session topics?
I think you covered a lot of the good ones. I mean, like you said, I think it's really important to have a discussion. Although there are times when doing something else is appropriate too, and that's the beauty of unconference is, do what you want to do, and people will come and participate or not. Oh, one thing that's important, I don't think you mentioned this, is it's okay to not be the expert. Right? If you want to know about a topic, call a session, because the experts will come and then you can learn from them. So that's another good tip for sessions is don't be afraid to call a session just because you don't think you're the most knowledgeable person in the room about that topic, because you'll have a good discussion.
Fantastic. The other thing that I'd mention, it's when you're at a physical location, it's tempting to go to a session because you're already there. When you're virtual, it's tempting to only go to the sessions that you think would be interesting. And while it's important to sort of manage life and balance things or whatever needs to happen, I would encourage you to go to look for sessions to go to, even if you are not exactly sure what it's about or how well it's going to line up with your interest. I would go and just leave it on, and you can always, have a bite to eat or whatever you need to do in the background. But don't just go to the ones that you think are hyper interesting. I would try to attend as many as you can because of the types of things that you learn and the conversations that go on. Some of the best things I've learned at IIW are from sessions that I kind of went to because I couldn't find something else that was urgent, and that's what it did. And it's fantastic. So
Yeah,
it's tempting to only dip in, but you'll miss a bunch.
The surprises are part of the experience. Do you have anything, Kaliya?
No, I mean, no, it's all good.
Topics. I could start a little bit, but does anyone have any topics that they're hoping to hold a session on?
Well, I'm happy to share my topic. This is Lynn from Indicio. Maybe I'll share my screen really quick here. Start my video so you can see me. So, can you see Hyperledger in any network building here?
Yep.
Excellent. So my plan is to open it up for kind of questions and answers and discussion. I know quite a bit about some of the stuff later in my slide deck, but not so much about some of the earlier stuff. I'm a member of the Trust Over IP Utility Foundry work group, and they put together this cool place to start for building an indie network where you learn and convene and define. And then my intent is to show this and let people say what they want to learn about and what they're interested in. Whoever comes to the session, we need to start here and kind of go through all of it, or do we just need to jump over to one of the other topics? And then I put together a little bit of slides on each one to kind of spark the conversation and kind of answer questions and see what people are interested in learning more about. And I may be able to answer the questions, some of the later slides. Somebody else may be able to answer some of the questions earlier slides, whoever comes and is able to help out and discuss it. That's kind of it.
Awesome. Thanks, Lynn. I love that you've got questions. Those are the best kinds of sessions. Anyone else want to share? I have a few, but I'd rather hear about yours than mine.
I'll jump in, Sam, totally unprepared.
Go for it, Bruce.
I've been enjoying and being frustrated by the internet for a couple of decades and more now. And one of the big frustrations is the user ID and password. And I would like to ask some knowledgeable people to come and discuss how we could get rid of that, how we could replace it with verifiable credentials and other SSI artifacts and denizens.
We keep asking the question, Bruce, because we haven't solved it yet. So please, that's that's exactly the kinds of conversations we need to have.
I keep telling people, as soon as I solve internet identity, I'm going to solve calendars. I can't do them both at once.
Perfect. I've got a handful of that I'll share. I'm going to mention more than I ought to. I'm not solely responsible for all of these, but they're good topics that I've just got to have because they're things brewing around in my mind and they'll be good. Ken and I will be talking about two topics in different sessions. One is the use of directories in SSI and the role that they can play in discovering and interacting with folks. Another topic that we'll be talking about has only been briefly talked about in our community, but I think it is important. Credential escrow is one of these things, or identity escrow rather. And how we can balance privacy, but also accountability, depending on or other sorts of like legal requirements. So those are two of those topics that I think will be really good, and in those we're going to present kind of the ideas that we have, and then look for feedback and ask questions about them. Another one that I'll be doing I'll be doing a session. I'm the chair of the DIDCOM working group at the DIF, and also involved with Aries that was involved with DIDCOM V1. And so I'm going to do a session on DIDCOM that talks about why DIDCOM, what it provides, when it's useful, and then a little bit of an update about the working group. So that'll be a little bit of a good, like, hey, I've heard about this thing, but what in the heck is it type of a session. The one that I have the biggest questions about, this is another session, is I want to explore the world where the subject can't be the holder. Often we talk about the fact that a credential is issued to a person, they are the subject and they hold the credential and then they can present it to others. And I've become increasingly aware of circumstances where that can't really happen for legal often or legislative reasons. And so I want to explore what that's like, how you draw the line, how we interact with these types of things, and how we have an ecosystem that can handle all of those things, both subject held credentials and information credentials and otherwise that the subject can't actually hold. And so that will be an interesting question. I was putting together my notes for that, and mostly it comprises a little bit of what I'm thinking and mostly questions that I have. And so I am looking forward to hopefully learning from those that come and have insight into different aspects of that so that we can sort of all learn together on that topic. So 4 is a lot. I try to not have more than about 3 or 4 sessions because I want to go to other people's sessions. And so I will be, I've heard already from folks, different ones that I'm interested in going to, and that's really what I enjoy most. I'd rather not lead them, but I want to lead them when around topics that I feel like are important to have the conversations around. So.
Yeah, Sam, as you talk about that, it makes me think that there are 2 things related to what Sam just said about hosting 4 sessions. One, there's only 3 days, right? Which means that Sam's going to be presenting 2 sessions one day, and I mean, he could do all 4 one day if he wanted, I guess. But my point is that if he wants to go to other things, that makes scheduling other things later, because there are really only so many time slots in the day, and there are some more popular ones, primarily because of time zones. But the other side of that is there are plenty of session spaces, right? Because we've got lots of rooms. So don't shy away from hosting a session because you think, oh, it's all filled up. There's always plenty of room. So if you want to host sessions, you'll find slots for them.
Well, and particularly in the virtual space, the notes have been quite good because everyone's sitting at a keyboard, and so we've had much better notes than we have in the past. And I hope that somehow we can translate that back into the in-person IIWs when they resume. But you can often check notes for sessions you were not able to attend and find perhaps who was there or topics that were talked about, and that's really useful as well. Other topics or subjects that you hope to hear about, even if you're not hosting?
So there's one topic that I would like to host, and I'm grateful that Adrian is here, because I would like to have a discussion that talks about medical data and where the medical data is held. Some medical data fits quite nicely in a verifiable credential, that's great. But there are other instances where a more appropriate storage might be somewhere else. I don't know how you're ever going to get an MRI onto a phone. The data measured in gigabytes is not likely to be easily transferable or readily useful on a mobile device. So there's some discussion, I think, that would be very helpful to delineate some of the different possibilities for where medical data might be held and appropriately shared or controlled access to, and what is the mix of what would be a good mix of models for both storage and access and sharing of medical data.
We will certainly have at least one session. I usually try and do or be involved in a session on authorization protocols. And obviously they are close cousins to both credentials and identifier standards. And I'm sure there will be a number of sessions, in particular work that's going on in IETF protocol called GNAP, which I think applies directly to the point you're making.
Yeah, so that might be a session where you might be a marvelous host and I could be an attendee and be supportive and participate in the conversation, or I'd be happy to help organize and help referee a session where this debate is discussed. And
Sure. Are you all probably in the diff Slack, more or less? No? Okay, because it's good to have a Slack channel that we all have access to for coordinating these sessions, but doing it within the IIW framework, Kiko Chat, is a little bit confusing. Kaliya, you might want to mention, in other words, we're all sort of used to being able to chat in a single Zoom like we could now if we want to have a side chat, but I'm not sure what the recommended method is during IIW for getting in touch to, for instance, arrange to make sure that Ken and I can be in the same session when this is being discussed.
So that's one of the reasons why we've incorporated GatherTown. That might be the right kind of place. Have you used GatherTown before?
Oh, quite a bit. I use it a lot.
So it's not, so you don't think it'll solve your problem?
No, not at all.
Well, there's Rocket Chat.
Well, I never, I've used Kiko Chat extensively. I've done, college and medical school things, meetings that I've run on the Kiko Chat. The problem is that you need to be able to get a notification that makes sense, a text message, when somebody is trying to notify you. Now, Slack is very, very good at that. Rocket Chat might be able to do that, but I never figured out how to do it, in the IIW context.
Well, I mean, I'll say two things. One, I'll say that the best way to use Rocket Chat in the IIW context is to pop it out into a different window and keep that window open, which is something that I don't think we make clear enough, because then you can do exactly what you're saying. Get a notification, because it's essentially just Rocket Chat in a browser window.
And it'll send an email or a text?
It won't do email or text. It just gives you the notice. But we do have the IIW Slack, and if anybody here is not part of that and would like an invitation, just let me know and I can invite you. Just send, I'll put my email in the chat. You're welcome to send me something, because we do have a Slack for IIW.
It's historically been a little yet lesser used, but it has been used.
Yeah.
So I'm on there, for example.
And that might be the best place for what you're trying to do, Adrian.
Yeah, Gather Town is useful in the way that you suggested, but it doesn't solve this problem. And it's actually KikoChat in IIW context, KikoChat is much better than Gather Town because you can see who is in which room, kind of like we do with the glass walls at the museum. And in Gather Town, it's very difficult, not impossible. No, it's nearly impossible to get that same perspective. So when you have so many hundreds of people as we have at IIW, I don't see how Gather Town, I would double down on KikoChat because of that, is what I'm saying.
I mean, I think maybe, I'm going to talk to Donya because she does our and Tidy, the technical intro. Like, I'm not even sure how to pop Rocket Chat out of Kiko. So
yeah, well, and to your point, Adrian, we're not looking to replace Kiko with Gather Town. We just thought Gather Town would be a nice place for people to get together and have small conversations. It might be easier to get in and out of, but it's an experiment.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a social
we had the
space.
gardens where you could change the title of the garden in KikoChat, and I don't see why that mechanism isn't exactly the same as Gather Town. There are lots of reasons.
It's a social space, and they're both going to be there. It's just giving us more choices.
Yeah, it's just an experiment.
Okay, I'm all for experiments.
See how things go. See what works.
Other session thoughts or questions that folks have?
How many people on this call are new to IIW?
Looks like I've got 3 hands up, 4 and counting. Yeah, 4 hands up now.
It's cool.
5. It's increasing.
Well, hopefully this discussion hasn't dissuaded you from coming.
I will confess, IIW has ruined other conferences for me because of the how productive the time is. I leave exhausted every time. I'm surprised this question hasn't come up yet, but I'll ask it. Can you say anything about the future of IIW? We've had a couple virtual now in a row. Are there hopes for in person? And if so, do you plan to continue some sort of online element? And I don't know is an okay answer.
So it's a good question. And I think the ultimate answer is, I don't know, but that doesn't mean we haven't thought about it a lot. We have had a number of people tell us they actually like the online option better. Some of that is because of access, some of it's because of inclusion. We have had a number of people from India, for example, just as an example, or Africa, who would have never come to IIW otherwise because the travel was just too arduous for what they could afford. So to that point, I think the virtual event has added to the community, and I would hate to lose that. On the other hand, we all obviously, those of us who've been to the face-to-face IIW miss that. And there's, a lot of energy there, like Maya said at the start, it's just this, you just can feel it, which doesn't really happen in KikoChat. I don't want to talk KikoChat down, but it's virtual is just not the same as being in real life. We've talked about hybrid, having both options available. I'm kind of down on that because I think the virtual participants in a face-to-face event would always feel like second-class citizens. It wouldn't be the same as an all virtual event. So the other option would be to hold one of the IIWs each year as a virtual event and one as a face-to-face event. So lots of different options. And, for those of you who participate, have been to IIW before and know both options, I'd love to get your thoughts on it as well. I mean, we could do it here, but you could also just send them to Kaliya and I. Regardless of how it ends up, I think what we have learned virtually has changed how IIW will behave going forward. I mean, the notes work much better. So we may always have KikoChat available as a parallel, even if we're not running the virtual events, just for the note taking, just to have the note taking working like that. Session recording has been helpful to a lot of people, and there's no reason we couldn't session record at the face-to-face event. It would require some additional logistics to make sure we had, cameras and sufficient Wi-Fi and that sort of thing. But so anyway, that's my thoughts. Do you have any additional thoughts on that, Kaliya?
No, I mean, I agree with everything you're saying. I think, we're going to keep Kiko as a baseline for supporting organizing the notes. And, I think we're going to explore what it means to potentially alternate, right, between face-to-face and virtual when we can go back to face-to-face. So.
I for one, love the idea of every other type of a thing. So spring is one and fall is the other. To be honest, I'm feeling it really strong this time. I miss the conversations that you have at dinner or at the food line or whatever for lunch, and I miss those sorts of things. And maybe GatherTown will help this time, but I haven't had those types of sort of, you're crossing by someone and say hello real quick type of experiences virtually that I have had in person. And so, but I also like the ability, I feel like it's being able to attend remote is conducive to certain types of conversations, and it's hard to argue the access and inclusivity angles there because I've also observed that. But anyway, that's my 2 cents. I think that's maybe a great idea that it ends up being kind of a mix between the two, every other. Other thoughts?
I mean, one thing I heard coming into this session was that we wanted to encourage people when they're in sessions to actively participate, right? So that's part of the culture is IIW is not just sort of being on the receiving end of information, but speaking up. And so a lot of the technical communities that are meeting in their own working groups have a culture of queuing. So raising your hand and saying something. So don't hesitate to speak and to raise your voice in the sessions.
Even if it's to say, I don't know what that means, or can you explain further, or what was that acronym you just used? Those are good questions, because I promise if you ask, you're not the only person who doesn't know, and someone else will benefit from you asking that question as well.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, especially new people, are kind of hesitant to call a session, or even like you just said, Sam, even go, because they feel like, oh, I'm new here, and these people are experts. And the fact is that having been to 32 IIWs doesn't necessarily make me an expert. There's still plenty of things I don't know, and lots of new people come up with great sessions and great ideas. So don't be shy. Just join the community, jump in, speak out. I think you'll find it's a pretty friendly place.
So there's a comment in the chat from Miko. Thanks for putting your thing there. I just noticed that he's also voting for one of each year.
Thanks for highlighting that, Lynn. Well, awesome. I'm grateful to Phil and Kaliya for spilling some wisdom and sharing some history for us, and I'm looking forward to this IIW. If any of us can help in the meantime, then please reach out, and I'm sure we'd love to help you. I'm no expert, but I've been to a lot, and would love to help guide or answer any questions that we could, and Phil and Kaliya, of course, as well. I appreciate you taking some time to join us and talk over these things, and I look forward to interacting with all of you there. And if you haven't attended before, or I would encourage you to find a way. It's a very valuable experience.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Phil, Kaliya, Sam. It was great. So next meetup is going to be May 12th, Wednesday, same time. If you have idea about topics, you're welcome to email me at maya@indicio.tech, and feel free to throw any idea. And currently we have idea of maybe interoperabilities, UI UX, that kind of topics, but we haven't confirmed yet. So please let me know if you have anything. And thank you again, everyone, for coming to Indicio Community Meetup. And I look forward to seeing you next month. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye,
Thanks
everyone.
all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.